fast unto our feet.
Hello everyone and welcome to the 11th episode of the Heavensward Dungeon Lore series. In this series, I hope to explain things you might not know about Final Fantasy XIV dungeons, as well as discuss their individual stories and lore. This episode's dungeon is the Antitower. As we have come to see by now, the Sharlayans left behind many an interesting facility with the exodus from the Duranian hinterlands. The Great Gubal Library, St. Markian's Arboretum, and thirdly, today's strange location, the Antitower. As it sounds, the tower itself stands upside down in a deep valley within the Duranian hinterlands, and serves as a purpose to study the ethereal sea itself. The so-called peak of the tower practically touches the sea, and at the time was an extremely useful way of studying its properties, and help in unravelling the more ancient secrets of the star. On the Warrior of Light's current adventures, we still search for the missing scions to return home to the Rising Stones in Mordona. Tatara informs us that Falamin, Hori Boulder and Kultane are finally making their way back after being driven out by the Crystal Braves, after which Kryl and Thancred pose a plan to begin searching for Minfilia. They plan to investigate the area we fought the Ultima weapon, in an attempt to investigate the etheric traces left behind by the battle. Using these, they intend to find a pattern related to Hydaelyn's blessing, hoping to discover where Minfilia might have disappeared to from the Sylvie aqueducts. The Rising Stones themselves pick up in liveliness after the return of 3 more scions, however, causing the place to feel more like home once again. Travelling to Idleshire to discover the results of Kryl and Thancred's investigation, they inform us of the pattern between the Praetorium, the aqueducts and the Isle of Val, where Kryl was shielded by the Blessing of Light. They deduce that Hydaelyn must have interfered with Minfilia's fate, whisking her away to somewhere as yet unknown. Considering that Y'shtola wound up within the lifestream itself, however, Kryl believes that Hydaelyn may have directly influenced Minfilia's consciousness towards the ethereal sea, and hopes to be able to get close enough to the place to be able to study further. This prompts Y'shtola to suggest using the Antitower, left behind by the Sharlayans, as a means to access the ethereal sea in the best manner possible. The downside of the plan is that the custodian of the place must give express permission for the tower to become accessible. As is somewhat of a trend by this point, this leads the group once more back to Matoya's cave, where the Archon seems to know we seek yet more aid from her. Although we are successful in obtaining permission to enter the tower, Matoya demands that someone remain behind to help with errands around the cave, while the others venture forth and cull any of the now rampant familiars left behind by the Sharlayans. This leaves Kryl at Matoya's side, while the rest of the scions begin to inch closer to one of the deeper mysteries of Eorzea. Entering through the passageway, we find ourselves on a large bridge heading towards the tower in the distance. As Matoya mentioned, many of the foes here are those experiments and familiars left long ago, without commands and able to fend for themselves. We see many of the Pirogos, the frog-like creatures wielding staves, defending the tower by calling forth their own minions. We head across the floating platforms towards the tower as we see the ethereal sea swirling below, almost touching the very end point of the place. After another Pirogo and his minions, we reach the Manifest, where the leader of the Pirogo band awaits. During the fight, Zuro Rogo calls forth yet more of the frog wizards and uses his croaking voices to meddle with the party. Discordant Harmony summons multiple musical bubbles around the arena, each of which explode after a time in an area. Odious Croak launches a barrage of sound at the tanking party member, causing them to receive intermittent damage. When injured, Zuro Rogo begins channeling his frog song, transforming 2 party members into frogs that are then hounded by more persistent bubbles over time. This can only be stopped by having the remaining members defeat the additional frogs summoned forth by Zuro. After the frog falls, we take the next transporter down the up staircase through a nearby doorway, leading us to the lower reaches of the tower. The locale changes dramatically as the party is surrounded by an etheric presence, with floating debris and furniture present as we descend to the next set of platforms. We defeat some Spriggans and Marilus as nearby objects come alive and fling themselves away, after which some floating wardrobes dispense fire sprites to attack the party. We can then proceed across the newly formed bridge to Wereheart's Leap, where the leader of the local Spriggans await. Ziggy, along with his enormous boulder, attack the party. To preface, yet again while writing the script for this dungeon, the mechanics of the Spriggan changed somewhat. Previously, Ziggy would place 3 comets in a line, each of which would explode in increasing sizes unless defeated. Currently, however, Ziggy summons 4 comets across the arena, which the party must avoid, after which he begins using his Jittering Jounce. This targets a party member who must hide behind a comet to avoid the damage from the Spriggan. Additionally, Ziggy uses his Jittering Glare to smash an area directly in front of him, damaging any caught in his line of sight. Upon defeat, we continue forth to the upper reaches of the tower proper, appearing to be on the ceiling of the tower, walking past the hanging chandeliers. The enemies here appear to be constructs and statues come to life, with mammoths and centaurs falling to the ceiling to defend the tower. After defeating a large group of the defenders and opening the door, we can head to Where All Witness to discover the most fearsome inhabitants of the tower. Calcabrina, 6 miniature dolls each brought alive with some unknown force, dance together as they prepare to attack the party. During the fight, the dolls initially begin by prancing about the arena, launching attacks in all directions. After managing to defeat the smaller dolls, however, they revive and coalesce in the centre of the arena, where the true Calcabrina appears. An enormous doll, somewhat horrifying with a large head and stitched together parts, emerges. This creature uses its terrifying glance to catch party members looking at it, confusing them temporarily if caught. Calcabrina's main threat is Dollhouse, which transforms 2 party members into the smaller Calca or Brina dolls seen before. When inside the dolls, the unfortunate soul prances about the arena to unleash attacks on their fellows, but they can be freed by damaging the doll once again. Lastly, the doll uses Brace, defending itself from all sides except the front, reflecting attacks back at the attacker if wrongly performed. After dodging more doll attacks and evading the gaze of Calcabrina, the doll separates back into its smaller cells, who scatter, freeing the tower from their grasp. After this, we step forward and our crystal of light begins to resonate brightly, as we hear the words "hear, feel, think" from somewhere nearby. A vision begins, that of the Mother Crystal in a familiar voice. The being known as the Word of the Mother, given form as who we knew as Minfilia, descends upon us. She explains that after the banquet in Uldar, she was guided to the ethereal sea by Hydaelyn herself, and that as she drifted, she prayed and gave an offering to the Mother. Now, Minfilia speaks with the voice of Hydaelyn, able to bestow upon us the truth of the world, and asks us again to hear, feel, think. We begin gliding around the Mother Crystal as Minfilia explains the previous balance of the world, that light and dark once stood as equals. Everything stood until the darkness threatened to overwhelm the light for power, and thus Hydaelyn was forced to banish the darkness to the heavens, trapped within the moon itself. This event of such massive proportions caused the barriers between worlds to falter, leading to what would become known as the Sundering, splitting the source into its shards, 13 in total, each a reflection of the original world. In the source, however, Zodiac still longs to be whole again, and so his servants, the Ascians, labour to remove the barriers around the source, forcing the shards to rejoin with the source. To achieve this, they endeavour to bring about the Ardour, or the Calamities, for each signals the rejoining of another shard. This means that 7 rejoinings have since occurred after the Sundering, and the Word of the Mother states that no more can they be suffered to continue. But as she moves to speak on, Minfilia's form begins to waver as the last of the crystal's strength is spent. As she fades away, she beseeches us to continue forth and seek, but we know not exactly what she means. Back within the Antitower, Alphino deduces that we experience yet another vision, and we return to Matoya's cave to inform our allies. After explaining what we saw, the group stands in an upset silence, most everyone in confusion of the words Minfilia spoke. Thancred appears visibly upset, knowing that Minfilia is currently beyond reach of returning to the mortal world. Kryl explains that if Hydaelyn has grown weak enough to be unheard, it stands to reason that maintaining Minfilia's form would also be a struggle. The group realises that Minfilia may be further gone than any expected, having essentially become one with Hydaelyn in the ethereal sea. Matoya speaks to Alphino, telling him that with Minfilia gone, we ourselves must usher in the dawn's light. She asks Alphino to describe the Scions and their goals, and after hearing them, she wonders that Alphino may have forgotten the more basic truth of the situation. That in a war, one must do whatever it takes to come out victorious, be it kill, or if necessary, to be killed. Y'shtola pipes up and surmises that if the Ascians would go to any lengths to resurrect Zodiark, then the Scions too must retort with the same determination, to destroy the Ascians by any means. She then turns to Kryl, asking her to accompany her to address the many things that must be done. Thancred too walks away from the cave without a word, ignoring Alphino's call to him. The latter himself seems devastated, teary-eyed over the dividing once more of his comrades. We give him a word of comfort, and he tells us he always knew Minfilia would choose to give her everything for her beliefs, but wishes that the sacrifice from fighting the darkness would simply come to an end. And that's the end of the story and lore of the Antitower. Although initially inspired to visit the tower and pull Minfilia from the depths of the ethereal sea, the Scions now seem more divided than ever, even after regrouping with most of their number. But with Alphino still at our side, we look to push on to find a path onwards to the future. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more Final Fantasy XIV lore, and I'll see you next time for the hard mode version of the Lost City of Amdapor.